My name is Rachel Moore, and I was born 4 minutes after my twin sister Hannah. According to my parents, Charles and Elizabeth Moore, those 4 minutes apparently erected an invisible, insurmountable wall between us. Growing up, it often felt like they had one daughter they cherished and one they tolerated. Guess which one I was? It wasn't overt cruelty, not usually. It was quieter than that, more insidious. A constant, subtle tilting of the scales. Hannah got the new bicycle with the sparkly streamers. I inherited the rusty hand-me-down from our cousin. Hannah got the frilly pink canopy bed she begged for. I got the practical twin frame with the mattress that sagged slightly in the middle. When Hannah wanted the last slice of cake, she got it, often accompanied by a fond chuckle from Dad about her sweet tooth. When I reached for it, Mom would gently steer my hand away, reminding me about healthy eating habits. Dolls were a particular point of contention in my 5-year-old world. Hannah's side of our shared room overflowed with pristine Barbies, porcelain figures with vacant stares, plush animals still bearing their store tags. Mine was populated by a motley crew of slightly damaged hand-me-downs from neighbors. A Cabbage Patch doll with yarn hair perpetually askew, a teddy bear missing one button eye, a gift from my grandmother, my sole ally, a Barbie whose head tilted at a permanently jaunished angle. When Hannah cried over a dropped ice cream cone, a tangled shoelace, a perceived slight from a playmate, Mom would drop everything, rushing to scoop her up in a comforting embrace, murmuring soothing words until the tears subsided. When I inevitably tripped over my own feet playing tag and scraped my knee, drawing blood that stained my already worn jeans, the response was invariably different. "Oh, get up, Rachel," Dad would say, barely glancing over his newspaper. "You're a strong girl. Be patient, it'll stop bleeding." Maybe Mom would hand me a paper napkin from the kitchen dispenser before sending me back outside, the sting on my knee less painful than the sting of their casual indifference. Even then, at 5 or 6, I understood. Tears didn't work for me. Complaining didn't work. To get noticed, truly seen, I had to do something more, something extraordinary. I remember one afternoon at the park. Hannah, always physically timid despite her outward confidence, stood at the base of a tall, slightly intimidating metal climbing structure, whining that she wanted to reach the top but was too scared. I was scared too. The metal bars looked slippery, the drop significant. But seeing the familiar pattern about to unfold, Hannah crying, Mom cooing, Dad praising her for wanting to climb even if she didn't, something stubborn flared in me. I scrambled up the structure, my small hands gripping tight, heart pounding, reached the top platform and, without giving myself time to think, jumped off. Landing with a jarring thud in the wood chips below, I looked up, breathless, triumphant, expecting something. Praise for my courage? Acknowledgement? Dad ran over immediately, to Hannah. He scooped her into a hug. "See? It's okay, sweetie. You were so brave to even think about climbing." He glanced briefly at me, still sprawled in the wood chips, catching my breath. "Be careful, Rachel," he muttered absently. "You know you can hurt yourself." Then he turned back to comforting Hannah. No pride in my accomplishment, no concern beyond a cursory warning, just dismissal. That became the template. The harder I tried, the more I achieved, the more indifferent they seemed, perhaps even vaguely threatened by it. But Hannah could simply exist, smile, perform some minor feat, and be showered with praise. It's a heavy burden for a child, understanding you receive less love, less attention, for no discernible reason other than the arbitrary lottery of birth order, or perhaps some perceived fragility in your sibling that you apparently lack. I learned to hide the jealousy, the confusion, the deep, aching hurt. I cried at night, muffling my sobs into the threadbare fur of that one-eyed teddy bear Grandma gave me. Grandma, bless her soul, was the only one whose eyes held genuine warmth when they looked at me. She lived 2 states away. Visits were rare, but those brief weekends bathed me in an unconditional affection that felt like discovering sunshine after living perpetually in shadow. It only made returning to the chill of my own home harder. School only magnified the disparity. Hannah struggled academically, needing tutors and extra help, yet every B- was hailed as a monumental victory. Look, Charles, a B- in algebra. Hannah, darling, we're so proud of your effort, Mom would exclaim, taping the test to the refrigerator. Meanwhile, my straight A's, my certificates from state-level art competitions, a passion I pursued quietly, needing no encouragement. The short stories my teachers praised, they were met with lukewarm acknowledgments. Well, yes, well done, Rachel, Mom might say, her focus already drifting. But watch out. Don't get cocky. Smarts aren't everything. There was always that undercurrent, that tension, as if my independent success, achieved without their direct input or financial backing, was somehow an affront. I remember vividly bringing home our report cards when we were 10. Mine was a clean sweep of A's. Hannah had scraped by with a couple of B's amidst a sea of C's. My parents glanced at mine. Well, you're a smart girl, Rachel. That's clear. Dad nodded, setting it aside. Then they unfolded Hannah's. Wow, 3 B's! Fantastic, Hannah, Mom enthused. We are so proud of you. My heart didn't just sink, it felt like it plummeted into a cold, dark well. My hard work, my hours of studying, felt utterly invisible, meaningless next to Hannah's celebrated mediocrity. The narrative solidified as we grew older. Hannah was the sensitive one, the tender soul, the vulnerable twin who needed constant support and validation. I was the strong one, the independent one, the smart one who could figure it out myself. It became their justification for pouring their resources, time, attention, money, into Hannah while expecting me to navigate life largely on my own. At some point, I stopped expecting their support. Resignation set in. But resignation isn't the same as giving up. If anything, their indifference fueled a stubborn, burning drive within me. Not to prove them wrong necessarily, but to prove myself right. To prove I was worth something, even if they couldn't see it. When it came time for college applications, the path diverged predictably. Hannah, after some deliberation and likely significant parental guidance, declared she would major in accounting. It's practical, popular, she'd said with a shrug. We'll see where it leads. My own interest in accounting was genuine, born from a love for order, precision, the satisfying logic of numbers, a stark contrast to the emotional chaos of my home life. The fact that we both chose the same major at the same local university was dismissed by my parents as a lovely coincidence. Then came the conversation about tuition. My parents sat Hannah down, presented her with brochures, discussed dorm choices, and assured her they would cover everything: tuition, room, board, books, expenses. So you can focus entirely on your studies, darling, without any worries. My conversation was different. It took place standing in the kitchen while Mom unloaded groceries. Rachel, Dad began, clearing his throat. About college funds. Things are a bit tight right now, you understand. Things were always tight when it came to my needs. But you're so smart. We know you'll qualify for grants, maybe some scholarships, and you're resourceful. You can always get a part-time job if necessary. You won't be lost. We have absolute faith in you. Faith. It felt like a euphemism for benign neglect. The unfairness stung, sharp and familiar. They were spending a small fortune on Hannah's worry-free education, while I was expected to patch together scholarships and work study just to get through the door. But alongside the hurt, That old familiar defiance flared. You think I'm strong? You think I can handle it myself? Fine. Watch me. I spent that summer buried in applications, federal grants, state aid, obscure local scholarships, essay contests. I researched work-study options, campus jobs. I was determined not just to go to college, but to excel, entirely on my own terms. If they wouldn't invest in me, I would invest in myself. As I packed my few belongings for the dorms, a stark contrast to the carloads of new things Hannah was taking, I felt a surge of steely resolve. Hannah might have their funding, but I had something else. The absolute, unwavering certainty that my future was mine alone to build. College wasn't just a new chapter, it was a different universe. While Hannah settled into her spacious, parent-funded dorm room across campus, complete with a mini fridge stocked via weekly care packages and a wardrobe refreshed each season, I moved into a cramped triple on the oldest side of campus with two strangers and furniture that looked suspiciously like it predated the invention of the printing press. My financial aid package, cobbled together from federal grants, a modest state scholarship I'd fought tooth and nail for, and work study, covered tuition and the basic room, but little else. My life quickly fell into a relentless rhythm: early morning classes, followed by hours shelving books or checking IDs at the campus library circulation desk for my work-study assignment. Evenings were spent hunched over textbooks in that same library until closing time, grabbing cheap ramen or pizza by the slice on the way back to the dorm, to earn extra cash for essentials. Textbooks Mom insisted Hannah couldn't possibly share. Bus fare, toothpaste. I picked up weekend cleaning shifts in the dorms, scrubbing floors and bathrooms while my peers nursed hangovers or attended football games. Exhaustion became my constant companion, settling deep in my bones, under my eyes. Sometimes I'd pass Hannah on the quad, surrounded by a laughing group of friends, dressed effortlessly in clothes I knew were new because I'd seen the shopping bags during my last brief, obligatory visit home. She'd wave, sometimes call out, "You look tired, Rachel. Maybe you should manage your time better instead of running around everywhere." Her tone held that familiar blend of pity and condescension, as if my exhaustion were a result of poor planning rather than sheer necessity. I learned to just smile back tightly, murmur something non-committal, and keep walking. Showing resentment was pointless. Explaining the reality of my life felt like begging for sympathy I knew wouldn't be genuinely offered. This was my path. I chose it. Or rather, it was chosen for me. My inner voice, the one that had learned to whisper encouragement in the dark, just kept repeating, "Hang in there, Rachel. You have everything ahead of you." It wasn't just about survival, though. I loved the learning. Accounting, with its clean logic and intricate rules, felt like a sanctuary. Numbers didn't lie. Balance sheets didn't play favorites. I devoured the material, my grades reflecting the hours I poured in while Hannah scraped by, relying on study groups and, I suspected, considerable parental help with challenging assignments. I knew good grades alone weren't enough, especially coming from a state university often overlooked by top firms. I needed experience. During the summer after my freshman year, while Hannah vacationed in Europe, a graduation present, darling, Mom had cooed. I started knocking on doors at local accounting and audit firms. Most politely dismissed me. They recruited interns from more prestigious business schools. But I was persistent. I offered to work for free, just for the experience. Finally, a small, slightly overwhelmed audit firm downtown agreed to let me help out informally. I brought coffee, made endless photocopies, organized chaotic filing cabinets. But I also listened. I watched how audits were conducted, how client relationships were managed, how financial statements were analyzed. I absorbed everything. Gradually, impressed by my quiet diligence, They started letting me assist with small, tedious tasks, data entry, cross-referencing documents. It wasn't glamorous, but it was invaluable real-world exposure. Around the same time, I enrolled in an elective taught by Professor McLaughlin, International Financial Reporting Standards. It was notoriously difficult, but he was considered one of the best minds in the accounting department. His passion for the subject was infectious, his standards exacting. I threw myself into the course. After the first lecture, he stopped me as I was packing my bag. "Rachel Moore, correct?" he asked, peering over his glasses. "You have a remarkably strong grasp of the foundational principles. Where did you study prior to this?" I felt a flush creep up my neck. "Nowhere in particular, Professor. I read a lot. Try to figure things out." He smiled, a rare, genuine expression that lit up his eyes. "A commendable approach. Do you enjoy accounting?" "Very much, sir," I replied honestly. "I believe order in numbers helps create order elsewhere. In business, even in minds." An intriguing formulation, he mused. He paused. "I find myself in need of a research assistant this semester. Someone to help prepare teaching materials, perhaps check student assignments for basic accuracy. The pay isn't much, but it offers exposure. Are you interested?" Interested? I felt like I might float away. "Yes, absolutely, Professor. I would be honored." Walking back to my dorm room that day, clutching the offer like a winning lottery ticket, I felt euphoric. For the first time, someone in a position of authority hadn't just acknowledged my hard work. They had seen my potential, valued my mind. On impulse, still buzzing, I called home, hoping, foolishly perhaps, that this news might finally elicit a spark of genuine pride. "Hi, Mom," I began, unable to keep the excitement from my voice. "Guess what? Professor McLaughlin. He's one of the top accounting professors. He just asked me to be his paid research assistant." "Oh?" Mom's voice was distracted. I could hear the television in the background. "Well, that's good, Rachel. Keep you busy." A pause. "Listen, Hannah just called. She was invited to that exclusive end-of-term garden party at Professor Davenport's country house. You know, the Davenport? Huge philanthropist, connections everywhere. Apparently, only the top students get invited. Isn't that wonderful for her? Such good exposure." I sighed, the familiar weight settling back in my chest. My concrete academic achievement, earning a paid position with a respected professor based on merit, versus Hannah attending a fancy party. In their eyes, apparently, equal billing. Perhaps even tilted in Hannah's favor due to the high society connection. "Yeah, Mom," I said, my voice flat now. "That's great for Hannah." I made an excuse and ended the call. That stubborn inner child still hoping for a crumb of praise finally went silent. Lesson learned. My victories were my own. Sharing them only invited comparison or indifference. It was Professor McLaughlin who, a semester later, forwarded me an email with the subject line, "Benjamin Ford Scholarship Information." I opened it curiously. It described a highly prestigious national scholarship program for accounting undergraduates, awarded annually to only 5 students in the entire country based on academic excellence, leadership potential, extracurriculars, and rigorous essays. The prize included significant tuition coverage and internship opportunities with top firms. It seemed impossibly out of reach, designed for the Ivy League elite, not someone juggling cleaning shifts and state school classes. "I didn't apply for this," I told Professor McLaughlin later that week. He smiled knowingly. "I submitted your academic portfolio for preliminary review, Rachel. A few professors nominate outstanding students each year without initially telling them. Avoids unnecessary pressure. The selection committee was extremely impressed. They've invited you to submit a formal application." He handed me the detailed application packet. The standard is incredibly high, but I believe you have a genuine chance. I stared at the packet, then at him. Me? A chance at the Benjamin Ford Scholarship? It felt surreal, but Professor McLaughlin's quiet confidence was contagious. I have to try, I decided. And this time I told no one at home, not my parents, not Hannah. This hope, this long shot, was mine alone to nurture or see extinguished. I wouldn't expose it to their casual indifference or worse, their pitying skepticism. Preparing the application consumed me for weeks, layered on top of my studies, my assistantship, my library job. Essays crafted and rewritten late into the night, transcripts gathered, tasks completed. Professor McLaughlin provided invaluable guidance, reviewing my essays, writing a stellar recommendation. I poured every ounce of myself into that application, fueled by a desperate, quiet hope. I sent it off just before the deadline, then resolutely pushed it from my mind, burying myself back in the familiar grind. Expecting nothing, hoping for everything. 3 agonizing months later, an official-looking letter arrived in my dorm mailbox, thick and bearing the Scholarship Foundation's embossed logo. My hands trembled as I tore it open, scanning the first lines, my heart pounding against my ribs. Dear Ms. Moore, on behalf of the Benjamin Ford Scholarship Selection Committee, it is our distinct honor and pleasure to inform you that you have been selected as one of this year's 5 national scholars. I read the words again, then again. Joy, fierce and overwhelming, surged through me, so potent it brought tears to my eyes. Disbelief warred with a profound sense of accomplishment. I sank onto my narrow dorm bed, clutching the letter, the quiet voice inside me no longer whispering but shouting, "You see, Rachel? You can do it. You did it." In that solitary moment, holding the proof of my success earned entirely through my own grit and intellect, I felt a fundamental shift. I was no longer just the overlooked twin, the girl defined by her family's indifference. I was a Benjamin Ford scholar. And maybe, just maybe, that meant I didn't need anyone else's validation anymore. I had finally earned my own. Winning the Benjamin Ford Scholarship wasn't just a line item on my resume. It felt like rewriting my own internal code. The constant background hum of "not good enough," installed during years of comparative neglect, finally began to quiet. The financial freedom was, of course, immense, liberating me from the relentless pressure of juggling cleaning shifts with advanced accounting theory. But the deeper impact was psychological. It was external proof, on a national scale, that my hard work and intellect had value, independent of my family's validation or lack thereof. I walked across campus with my head held a little higher, breathing air that felt slightly less thin. Months later, the formal invitation to the National Award Ceremony in Boston arrived like a gilded summons to another world. It spoke of celebrating achievement, networking with industry leaders, and sharing the honor with family. Parents or guardians are strongly encouraged to attend. One line read, polite but insistent. My stomach twisted. Invite them? Invite Charles and Elizabeth Moore to witness a celebration predicated on the very self-reliance their indifference had forced upon me? The irony was thick enough to choke on. That stubborn 15-year-old inside me, the one who still remembered the sting of being denied a simple warm scarf, wanted them there, wanted them to see, unequivocally, what I had become despite their lack of investment. But the weary adult, the one who knew their patterns all too well, dreaded the potential for awkward silences, faint praise, or worse, subtle attempts to claim credit now that success was undeniable. Jonah, sensing my internal tug-of-war, offered simple wisdom. It's your stage, Rachel. You decide who gets a front row seat. In the end, I opted for detached obligation. I would extend the invitation as requested. Their attendance was their decision, their reaction, their own burden. The phone call was predictably brief and lacked enthusiasm. Boston? Mom had repeated, sounding vaguely inconvenienced. An award? Oh, well, Charles has inventory. We'll try to make it dear. Click. No questions asked about the award itself, just the familiar sound of my achievements being minimized. Against my expectations, however, they decided to come. Dad, Mom, and Hannah. The ceremony day felt surreal. The grand university auditorium in Boston pulsed with quiet excitement. I found my assigned seat among the other four scholars, bright, accomplished students surrounded by proud, beaming families. Seeing them, the easy hugs, the shared laughter, the palpable pride, highlighted the stark contrast with my own arriving contingent. My parents looked slightly bewildered, out of place amidst the academic pomp. Hannah seemed mostly preoccupied with her phone, offering me only a brief, tight smile. We exchanged awkward pleasantries before I retreated to my seat, focusing on the program, trying to steady my nerves. The ceremony unfolded with speeches and accolades. Then it was my turn. The university rector, a man with kind eyes and a warm presence, stepped to the podium. Our final scholar this year, he began, his voice filling the hall, is an extraordinary example of resilience. He spoke of my academic record, my internships, Professor McLaughlin's praise. And then he said it, the words landing with quiet precision. And it is particularly noteworthy that Ms. Moore achieved this distinction without traditional financial support from her family, putting herself through college by working multiple jobs, including library assistant and dormitory cleaner, demonstrating an iron will and a determination that simply does not quit. Without traditional financial support from her family, the phrase hung in the air. I instinctively glanced back at them. Mom's face was ashen, her polite smile gone rigid. Dad looked directly at the rector, his brow deeply furrowed, confusion warring with what looked like dawning comprehension. Hannah stared straight ahead, her knuckles white where she gripped her phone. In that public moment, under the weight of the rector's words, the carefully constructed facade of our family dynamic seemed to visibly crack. They were seeing the truth, the one I lived, and they ignored, reflected back at them on a national stage. Ladies and gentlemen, a truly self-made scholar, Rachel Moore. Walking to the stage felt like floating. The applause was a dull roar in my ears. I shook the rector's hand, accepted the heavy plaque, smiled for the photographer. This wasn't about them anymore. This fierce, bright moment of recognition belonged solely to me. Afterward, the reception buzzed with energy. Professor McLaughlin was beaming. Recruiters from the biggest accounting firms in the country surrounded me, praising my record, discussing opportunities in New York, Chicago, LA. For a dizzying hour, I was the center of positive attention, valued for my potential, my hard work finally, tangibly rewarded. Then, inevitably, my family navigated through the well-wishers, approaching me like hesitant supplicants. Rachel, Mom started, her voice strained, forcing a smile. Well, congratulations. We just had no idea it was all this important. The jobs you mentioned. Did you ever truly listen when I tried to tell you? I asked, keeping my voice low and steady. She flushed. Dad cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably. We always knew you were smart, Rachel. So capable. We just figured you could handle things yourself. You're strong. You never asked. You never asked if I needed help, Dad. I interrupted gently but firmly. You told me I was strong, and it let you off the hook. It was easier for you to believe I didn't need anything. He looked down, unable to respond. Hannah chimed in, her voice betraying her confusion. But I didn't know you had to work like that. I thought college was paid for. I met my twins' bewildered gaze. We went to the same school, Hannah, but we never lived the same life. Did you ever once stop to wonder how? Silence. Thick, awkward, laden with years of unspoken disparity. I looked at their faces, shocked, embarrassed, perhaps finally grasping a fraction of the reality I'd navigated alone. The anger I expected to feel wasn't there. In its place was just a vast, calm clarity. It doesn't matter anymore, I said, and the words felt true, liberating. I appreciate you coming today, but I don't need your approval to know what I've accomplished. I don't need your validation. I did this. Myself. I saw the flicker of hurt, perhaps, in my father's eyes, confusion in my mother's, maybe resentment in Hannah's. But it didn't touch me in the same way anymore. I gave them a small nod, then turned decisively towards the recruiter from the New York firm who was waiting nearby, ready to discuss my future. 2 months later, I moved into a tiny studio apartment in Manhattan, starting my career as a junior auditor. The work was demanding, the city overwhelming, but exhilarating. My life was finally, completely, my own. My relationship with my family found a new, distant equilibrium: polite birthday calls, brief holiday texts. I learned through office grapevine and occasional awkward updates from Hannah, who seemed to be struggling professionally, that my success had, ironically, made my parents push her towards more independence, a development Hannah clearly resented. The distance felt right, healthy. Forgiveness remained a complex, unresolved territory, but the constant ache for their approval had faded, replaced by a quiet confidence. My grandmother's proud voice over the phone after the ceremony, "I always knew you had fire in you, Rachel," echoed far louder than my parents' stunned silence. Sometimes, walking through the city, bundled in the warm, high-quality wool coat I'd bought myself with my own earnings, I'd remember that shivering 15-year-old girl. I no longer felt pity for her, but a fierce admiration for her resilience. She hadn't received the warmth she needed back then, so she learned to build her own fire. And that internal flame, I knew now, was brighter and more enduring than any external praise could ever be.